Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to have my guest today that I'm interviewing for my newsletter, Catherine Monahan. She is a naturopathic doctor with a specialty in integrative mental health. She has a degree from the National University of Naturopathic Medicine in Portland, Oregon. She's based in the San Francisco Bay Area, but she has a virtual practice. Catherine, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Marie.
Yeah, we're a few days away from daylight savings, and we're past the autumn equinox. There's more darkness than light each day, and I'm just curious how you, how's that feeling for you? How are you feeling this change in the season?
This year, I'm really ready for it. I don't know why, but I am. I'm loving the changing leaves. I love that we got some rain. But it really varies for me from year to year. And there are things I love about autumn and winter seasons. And I really look forward to making soups and stews. And then I've also had some tough times in my life that happened during those seasons. And those memories can get triggered sometimes,
Mm,
less and less as I work with them. But, it's, I feel like a full experience, the whole range.
yeah, yeah. That's Thanks for sharing that. I think it's really helpful for people to hear what different experiences are like this time of year.
Yeah. And what's it like for you? I mean, it varies so much, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this year in comparison to last year, it's easier. I think last year was a harder autumn, kind of looming into the winter, not really being certain of what social life was going to look like. We'd been really relying on some outdoor gathering, and I knew that the colder weather and rain would make that a little harder. But generally, I feel like the last few years, I've allowed myself to kind of sink into a bit of this deliciousness of the dark, of like going inward. I'm really treating it as an opportunity to, um, I don't know, exercise my introvert muscles and do less and schedule less. And I'm really feeling ready for that right now. So, but I do know a lot of my, even I would say in the morning, I'm tired. I'm noticing a tendency to want to sleep more. The mornings are a little harder to get up. Um, I don't feel quite as motivated to exercise as much. And I know that comes up in my treatment room a lot. People are like, they get a little freaked out. Like, oh, I'm used to operating at a certain level all the time. This feels uncomfortable. And that feels normal. But I mean, I reassure people and I talk about that in newsletters that that's normal. But I do also know that some of my patients and some of my audience feels a great difficulty this time of year.
Yeah.
And that not everybody is just like, oh, we just need to learn how to love it. That's not necessarily the solution for everybody. And I'm curious, do you start to notice a like an uptick in people calling you this time of year?
Well, I would say maybe for the reason they're calling.
Mm,
Yes. And it's interesting. I mean, it's actually great when they call this time of year because we're just starting. So there's plenty of time to kind of make some plans to have it be a better experience, right,
mm,
around the season. Sometimes I get the calls in January and February, and people are like in really low places, and of course we can deal with that too, but it's harder, right? So, um, yeah, any time is the right time to reach out when it
mhm,
occurs to
mhm.
someone, right? And there's
Yeah,
always something we can do.
good. And do you I'm curious, do you treat is there a difference in the way that you hold somebody seeking support for seasonal affective disorder versus somebody who is seeking support for depression that exists all year or lately?
Yeah. Well, so usually seasonal affective disorder is held as like one episode of major depression. And then it's noted by the fact that it usually comes on and lifts with a transition in the season. Usually it, not always, but usually it's when we approach winter, people notice it, and then spring comes, they feel better. Um, Whereas depression doesn't have as much seasonality to it, but they both can impact our ability to carry out our activities of daily living. A little bit of what you're mentioning, right? Just this tendency to want to kind of hibernate like bears and slow down and yeah, so just um I think sometimes in the beginning, it can, unless people know they have a history of it, it's even just a process of like figuring out whether it is related to a seasonal change or not.
Mhm.
Um, I think the approaches can be similar in that way. Um, but then once we realize it's seasonal, like I have some people who have been with me for a while now. So when fall comes around, I put it on the agenda when they come in, and it's so much better. Like, I've had people come in who are having like in really low
Mhm.
places. And now we've found like things they look forward to. We leverage that over this period. And there's for some it's the art of being cozy,
Mhm.
huga, that have you like, and kind of like really getting into that. And then on other levels it's just kind of like you were saying, like, is there some grief that it really could use some attention right now? And then or does the heart need some support, right? Or do we
Mhm.
need calming nerves or uplifting homeopathics? And sometimes it's like looking at a physiological level of support for people. I usually treat on both the physical and the emotional level. So we'll usually do a little of each. And sometimes that's looking at some labs, either neurotransmitters, or we can look at nutrient levels, or sometimes appropriate. And other times, there are certain supplements, like we don't get as much sun. So sometimes it's just getting some extra vitamin D is really helpful.
Mhm. I love the fact that you do the neurotransmitter testing because so often I hear people on their journey with an antidepressant. They're trying one, it doesn't quite fit. They're trying another. For some people, it's a really arduous journey. For others, it's more like they didn't quite get what they needed and they kind of abandon the effort. Do you, I mean, and I know that that's not something that um, most Western allopathic doctors are working with, as I understand it.
Mhm.
Do you tend to work directly with medical doctors and psychiatrists to help prescribe the right antidepressant, or what's your process around the neurotransmitter testing and
Yeah,
prescribing?
yeah. So oftentimes I do some of both, and it's largely based on patient preference and patient situation. A lot of times it's just helping patients identify options, and that really there's this whole spectrum. And sometimes medications involved, sometimes it's just naturopathic treatment, and sometimes it's a combination. You can have less medication, and so that you're not feeling side effects when we're doing a little bit of naturopathic care. And
Mhm.
so really I try and help people determine what might be the best fit for them. And yes, sometimes there are doing nutrient testing can really help actually determine which medications can be more helpful. So if people haven't had a good experience, or sometimes if people haven't had a good experience, that's when they really want to try doing a natural route, um, if they can. So, and I'm happy to and do sometimes work with their providers directly if the patient wants that.
Mhm, mhm. Great. And I love the fact that I mean, it might be a process that gets them on the right antidepressant, but it might actually be a process that, um, prefacing this with, I'm in complete support and getting folks where they need to be to regardless of the method, but sometimes doing it without the pharmaceutical bypasses some side effects. And I love the fact that the naturopathic solutions can be side effect free and get people where they want to go, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And it's just nice to have options, right? And
yep,
yeah, so um, yeah,
I
and
agree.
that's often so people come in and we'll usually talk through their history and their symptoms and what they've already tried or not. And then we put together kind of a next steps plan that sounds like a good fit for them. And then, we tweak as we go and adjust. And um, yeah, eventually someone's on like a kind of in a good place and kind of has a routine that works for them. And then sometimes it shifts over time, and that's okay too.
And do you find that patients, are you meeting with people weekly, monthly, quarterly, or does it kind of ramp up and slow down? What do people usually expect when they're working on emotional health?
Yeah. If people come to me in a pretty intense place, sometimes we might, and it depends what the care team looks like, right? If there is a counselor in place, if they have an awesome acupuncturist, then oftentimes maybe like once a month is enough. I'd say that's a pretty common rhythm. If if there is no one else and I'm the only person they're working with and they're really not feeling well, we might meet weekly or every other week for about a month until they're feeling comfortable and
Mhm.
stable, and then we'll spread that out. And then once people really we kind of have it dialed in and they're feeling pretty good, then yeah, it's more check-ins. Depending what people's treatment looks like, we might want to measure follow-up lab levels in 6 months. So sometimes it's quarterly check-in, or eventually it becomes once or twice a year, or if something comes up, you know.
I can imagine that people feel a great sense of support knowing that they've got that opportunity to check in with you, and really spend the time figuring it out. And I know, in the Western world, it's faster visits. And I don't know. What do I want to say? I'm grateful that people have you to support them, and I'm really excited to share your existence with my audience. And it just felt like a really, really well timed moment to have this conversation and remind people of the different ways they could get support, both for seasonal affective disorder and for depression in general. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
I appreciate being here with you. And I love that we can partner and team up to help people feel better as well. And having body based therapies is so helpful.
Good. Thank you.